Hey everyone, Happy New Year! It's time for another episode of Monday Mastery, live at 6. I've changed the time up because it seemed we had a few more viewers during the 6 o'clock hour, and so we're just going to see how 6 o'clock works for going forward. So anyway, I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas and a Happy New Year and safe holidays. And excuse me for shaking the table here, but I'm in my RV, and it doesn't take a lot to get things shaking, and I'm playing with some lighting, and I don't know, I've got this weird glare on my glasses. So anyway, well, I'm glad you're all here, and again, I hope you had an awesome Christmas and New Year's, and everybody's safe and healthy. I know I was not quite healthy. I ended up with the flu between Christmas and New Year's, and I still have a little bit of the sniffles here, so bear with me. Hey, Deborah, thanks for joining in from Lee's Summit, and I'm actually in Temple, Texas. So you can see I'm in my RV, looking out the window or the window behind me. You can see some of the other RVs in the campground here. It's been an interesting couple of days with frozen water because it's got down, I think, to about 21 yesterday morning, and about 27, 28 this morning. So it's been an interesting transition in Texas here. I'm more accustomed to that up in Missouri and Kansas, but not quite so much here. So it's and ended up flooding my because of a couple of mistakes that I made, and some of the cold weather and frozen lines. I ended up flooding my trailer yesterday morning. So I spent, rather than being having a productive day, it was a day of cleaning up and drying out. And hey, Jerry, thanks for joining in. Jerry says RV life is the best. It is awesome. I really enjoy it. And now that I'm kind of getting set up, and I got a great heated water hose that connects from the water supply to the trailer. For those of you, hopefully we'll have no more frozen pipes, no more frozen water lines. So anyway, let's get. Hey, Jill, thanks for joining in. I think, Jill, if I'm not mistaken, you're in Tennessee. Is that correct? Um, and Jerry says it's going to be 37 in North Florida tonight. Yeah, we're going to be a little bit cooler. We're going to be about 10 degrees cooler here. So I will have freezing tonight, but it's plenty warm enough inside the RV. So anyway, I wanted to talk about some of the fundamentals. Yeah, Jill says yes, she's in Tennessee. Awesome. Thanks for joining in. You know, one of the things that a lot of times we lose sight of is the basics of dating. We all want to hit that home run. We want to find that special someone, and and I'm even guilty of it from the standpoint of teaching some of the beyond some of the fundamentals. But I think at the beginning of the year, it's a great time to review some of those, and some of them you're going to recognize as being, yeah, Rick, you talk about that all the time. I hear that all the time. But that it's the reason I teach these things is that they are so important. It's like any sport or any activity that you do in life. When you master the fundamentals, whether it's a sport or your job, or whatever it is, you become exponentially better because you're good at the basics. Once you have the basics down, and it's important to continue to work on the basics, but once you have those down, then you can step up and start start working on some of the other aspects of dating. So I'm just going to give a quick run through of what I want to talk about tonight, and we'll take your questions as we go, and then I'll come back and address each of these one at a time. But I want to talk about the importance of knowing what you want and need in a relationship. The importance of knowing the four cornerstones of great relationships. Know your love languages, or your love language, your primary love language. You don't need to be a master at all of these things, but you need to understand them. And I'll explain why a lot of these things are so important as we go. Be prepared emotionally and physically, and that's going to be an interesting. I was thinking, I talk a lot about being emotionally ready to date, but a lot of times we're not physically ready to date, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And then one thing that I don't touch on a lot, but it is so important, and I'll touch on it a couple of times a year, but it's personal hygiene. Yeah, and we've all got horror stories about people that we've dated, or dates that we've been on, that were just ruined, absolutely ruined, because of hygiene. And so we'll touch on that, and then again we'll do your questions, or take your questions and try to answer those as best we can. And I'm sorry for the table shaking. I'm not even touching it, but it's rocking and rolling. That's life in the RV lane. So anyway, we'll start back with knowing what you want and need in a relationship. This is, and I talk about this aspect on a regular basis. It's so important to be crystal clear about what your wants and needs are in a relationship, so that you know what you're looking for, that you don't end up spending a lot of or end up wasting a lot of time in the wrong relationships. And it's not that anybody that you may be dating is bad, but if they're not the right one for you, this is just time wasted, time lost that you can never get back. You may have some good experiences and some fun times, but deep down inside, how many of you have dated someone and have been basically enjoying the relationship, but deep down you just recognize that this wasn't going to be a long-term relationship, and then you keep procrastinating because you are having a decent time. You're afraid of hurting him or her, and by moving on, and you keep delaying and delaying and delaying, and pretty soon you've invested a year, 2 years, 5 years with somebody that you ultimately know is not making you happy, that you ultimately know is not your soulmate. I know I've been there. I've done that. So I'd like to see a show of hands, or yes, or just type in yes if you've done that. And so again, by being crystal clear, knowing what your must-haves are, by knowing what your deal breakers are, you can. Stacy, thank you. Stacy says yep. And Stacy, you're down here in I believe in Texas, if the Fort Worth area, are you not? And thanks for joining in. So it said the sinuses, the little bit of a head cold left is gonna be. I'll be popping cough drops here pretty quick, and drinking water to keep lubricated. Deborah says, "Oh yes, I've done that." So that's why it's so important. We've all experienced investing a lot of time, and they could be wonderful people that you're spending time with, but you know that deep down they're not the right one. It's not a satisfying soulmate relationship or extraordinary relationship, and it's so important to. I'm gonna have to pop a cough drop. Sorry about that. I hate talking with things in my mouth, but I can already feel my throat tightening up, and so we got to keep that open. Um, and also recognizing what your deal breakers are. I've talked with so many people that end up dating a smoker or an alcoholic, or because they're fun to begin with, but when you discover the downsides, when you discover their hidden secrets, if it were, you recognize that this isn't a healthy relationship. And hang on one sec. Okay, didn't want to cough online there. Hey Phil, thanks for joining in. And if you're dating somebody that has any one of your deal breakers, it should be an automatic I thanks, but no thanks. It's you're a wonderful person, but this is a deal breaker for me. This is where it's tough to be an adult. This is where it's tough to have an adult conversation. But if you want to ultimately end up with your soulmate, you have to stop wasting time with the wrong people. And again, it doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means they're not the right one. And when they're not the right one, there's no point in sticking around any longer than it takes to figure that out. And there's no time. It's never a waste of time up to the point that you recognize that they're not your soulmate, that they're not the right person for you. It's when it becomes a waste of time and wasted effort anytime beyond that. And when you recognize that the person you're with is not an ideal candidate for you, then it's time to say, it's time to move on. So knowing the four cornerstones. And if you have any questions in here, please feel free to ask. I'll answer as best I can. The four cornerstones, and this is something that I came up with 8 or 10 years ago, right before I started writing my book dating backward. And the four cornerstones are the foundation of all great relationships. You have to be able to develop an intellectual connection, a spiritual connection, an emotional connection, and a physical connection. Now, the intellectual connection is the one that connects you intellectually. It's you're able to have great conversations, and you can literally talk about anything and everything. You may not necessarily agree, but you can have good conversation. You're generally going to have the same morals and values. And if you don't, you should quickly recognize that this is probably not a healthy relationship for you. Sorry about that, but that's the way it is at this time of year. And I'm usually normally very healthy, but tonight's going to be one of those rough nights. Um, and the spiritual connection, you should be on the same page spiritually. If you're Christian, be with a Christian. If you're Jewish, be with another Jew. If you're atheist, be with an atheist. But when you try to mix religions or non-religions, what you're going to end up finding is that one or both of you are not going to be happy. One or both of you are going to be very dissatisfied. I, the number of women that I've interviewed that have dated guys that said, "Yeah, I'll go to church with you," but they weren't they weren't practicing Christians. And for the first couple of months, they go to church every Sunday with you, and then after the relationship matures a little bit, and you start getting into a normal routine or regular routine, one of you starts to say, "Yeah, I've got some other things I want to take care of," and that I want to get done today, so I'll skip church. You go ahead. And pretty soon you're going to church alone. And this is exactly what you wanted to avoid. So it's so important to, and that should be a red flag for you. That if he or she's not willing to go to church with you on a regular basis, assuming you want to go to church, or if you're both atheist, and then you're on the same page. But the idea is that you want to find somebody who has beliefs that basically mirror your own. You may not be in the same spot, or in the same location, or yeah, in the same spot spiritually, but you're moving. You're both moving in the same direction. One of you may be a little more advanced in your spiritual life than the other, but you can walk with each other and grow with each other. But if you're both going off in different directions, it's not going to be a really, really strong relationship. The emotional connection. This is one that takes time to develop, and there's emotions, or the connections deepen over time. I often talk about raging hormones, and there's a lot of things that go on hormonally within our bodies that help us develop a deeper connection with someone. Now, the emotional connection is should also include love, and there's some argument to be made that love is a choice. You can choose to love someone, and to be there for them emotionally. I think there is something to that, because I believe it's more of a choice when things are tough. We live in such an immediate gratification society right now that it's so easy to just drop the one you're with and go find somebody else. I mean, just look at all the online dating sites. It should be fairly obvious that anywhere you turn, there's resources available that you can start looking again. So it becomes a choice to stick with somebody that you love. And I the love aspect is or the emotional aspect is one aspect. It kind of permeates all the parts of your relationship, and it sometimes gets hard to describe, because the emotions, the feelings can go so deep, and the connection can go so deep, especially when you're with the right person. So, hopefully that's you guys understand that. Then there's the physical connection, and physical. When I say physical, most people go right for sexual, but there's another aspect of it, and that is the physical appearance. We all want to be attracted to our mate. We all want to be connected to somebody, or feel physically connected to somebody, and beauty is only skin deep, and sometimes it takes a while to develop a connection. But overall, and men are much more visual than women. And ladies, not that you don't want an attractive guy. I know you do. But men, let's face it, guys, we are much more superficial than the ladies are. Most women I know are much more willing to overlook physical attributes, or maybe lack of physical attributes, in an effort to get to know the man she's with and develop connections be just beyond the physical, the physical appearance. But then it is still important. Overall, we all want to be with somebody we're attracted to. And then there is the physical intimacy, and the physical intimacy should be kept as far down the road as possible. Statistically, I know 80% or more. Well, 80% are going to end up in bed with 80% of couples are going to end up in bed together on or before the eighth date. So, and scientifically, research shows that we all start to stop learning about each other. Our ability to learn about the other's traits starts to diminish greatly when we introduce sex into the relationship, because sex is a very special part of any relationship, or any couple's relationship, and it's important. Scripturally, if you want to go by the Christian rules, is strictly for the bounds of marriage. That's part of the marriage covenant. But in today's society, again, 80% of couples are in bed before on or before the eighth date, and 95% of couples never make it to marriage before having sex. So and again, the strongest relationships, studies show us, the strongest relationships, the strongest marriages are among those who have waited to have sex. Hey Gina, thanks for joining in. Hey Jacqueline, I am in Temple, Texas, in my RV. So this is what my little corner in my RV looks like. If it wasn't such a mess because of the little bit of flooding I had yesterday, and taking down Christmas decorations, and still not quite fully unpacked from moving in here full time, I'd give you a quick tour, but it's a wee bit on the messy side yet. There's still stuff that needs to find a home. But anyway, then let's see, the four cornerstones were the physical, and we'll wrap that one up with hold off on sex as long as possible. And it's not impossible to wait. Some of us are very impatient, and and once you've made love to somebody, you can never put that genie back in the bottle. And you can use excuses like, well, and these are excuses that I've heard. Well, I'm not marrying any man that I haven't slept with first, because I want to make sure everything works. And that's typically said by women that have had sexual problems, or who have been married to husbands that have had sexual problems, and were very, very frustrated. So okay, so we got that. The next one is know your love languages. If you haven't read the book, The 5 Love Languages, it's an awesome book. And I truly believe that it's important to know and understand at least what your primary love language is, because it makes communicating with somebody so much easier. And just to give you just a quick thumbnail sketch, the 5 love languages are physical touch, acts of service, quality time, gifts, and words of affirmation. And physical touch is not necessarily sexual in nature. It could be holding hands, or a touch of a shoulder, or a touch on an arm, literally a pat on the back, or a hug. It doesn't necessarily have to, again, be sexual in nature. Quality time is just spending time together. It may be having a good conversation, just sharing a glass of wine, whatever you determine as quality time. Gifts, and doesn't necessarily need to be big things. It can be a note. It can be a card. It can be something very simple like that. Just a note of recognition, a note of I love you, or whatever it might be, to let your partner know that you're thinking about them. Acts of service is doing things for somebody. I was, as an example, my ex I always thanked her for doing the laundry. That was an act of service to me. I was very appreciative when I'd be out washing the cars and she'd come out and give me a hand, or washing the boat and she'd come down and give me a hand. Those are kinds of things that I appreciated because they were acts of service. And it'd be taking the garbage out, fixing a cabinet door if it's loose, those types of things. Cooking a meal, very, very, very simple things that can be greatly appreciated by your partner if you're sharing the same love language. Words of affirmation, in it can be I love you. It's you're doing a great job. Just things that affirm the person. I really appreciate everything you do for me. So those are just a very, very brief thumbnail sketch of the five love languages. But in my experience, it's so much easier to communicate with somebody when you're communicating in the same language. We can all learn foreign languages, and it just doesn't mean we're going to be fluent in those languages. And the same thing with a love language. We can learn to communicate in somebody else's love language, but it's so much easier. It's so much more fluid when, or such a it creates such a much deeper connection when you're speaking the same love language. I dated a woman several years ago and my primary love language is physical touch, and we were sitting at her home watching TV, and we were sitting on a love seat, and her primary love language was not physical touch, and it was quite obvious because it just felt like there was a a concrete wall or a brick wall between us. I'd reach over to hold her hand, and she'd pull her hand away. And it was just, or if I put my hand on her leg, you could just feel her tense up and twist away. And it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't glaring. A glaring jerk off to one side, or a movement to one side. It was just ever so subtle. It made her uncomfortable, and so I recognized that with that, we weren't a great match. We weren't. There was that part of the connection was missing. So again, if you haven't read the book, take the time. It's an easy read. It's called the Five Love Languages, and I think it's by Gary Chapman, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have my copy in front of me, but it's a great book. The next thing I want to talk about is to be prepared, both physically and emotionally. And emotionally, and I've talked about this quite a bit in the last few months. That includes taking time to heal from your last relationship, or the end of your last relationship. It and sometimes that can just take time. I shared with you a month or so ago about a friend of mine that had gone through a horrendous divorce, and even before her divorce was over, she was in another relationship, and that relationship ended miserably. And as much as I tried to share with her that when she broke up with him the first time, that it wasn't the right relationship, that she wasn't ready for that level of commitment yet. She went in head first, and very much like a serial monogamist, where you leave one relationship and jump within a couple of weeks, you're in another relationship. And the problem with being a serial monogamist is you don't get time, or you don't take time to heal and grieve the loss of those relationships, and grow from the loss, recover from the loss of those relationships. And it's so important that we take that time for ourselves. And I'm as guilty of this as anyone. I've right after my divorce, man, I was out there, and as I look back, there were some women that I dated, and not that they were terrible people, but they were just obviously the wrong person for me, and I didn't see that at the time. And what we tend to do is we try to fulfill a need. We try to fill a hole that by replacing one relationship with another, and that's not necessarily the best thing to be able to move forward in a healthy way, because there's still so many hurts. There's still so many things that we haven't learned about ourselves. We tend to bury a lot of ourselves, especially if you came out of a toxic relationship. We tend to bury good and important parts of us in order to try to make the relationship work, or the marriage work. And over a period of years, we lose ourselves. We morph to be what that relationship needs in order to keep it going. Because none of us wants to, or for the most part, none of us want to give up on a relationship. And ladies, you all are the queens of this, of giving 110% into a relationship that has no chance in hell in surviving. So, we have to keep those things in mind when you start to recognize that the relationship is not the right one. It's not healthy. There's no sense in prolonging the agony, and because it only gets tougher as we go. So the minute red flags start popping up, we should be saying, "Yep, thanks, but no thanks. It's time for me to move on. This is it's not the right relationship for me." And just be honest. And some people are going to get upset with that. Some people are going to may get angry, but that's their problem, not yours. It's just we have to be honest with ourselves and be able to find that extraordinary relationship. And we can't do it when we're emotionally attached to somebody else. And that emotional attachment takes time to break. It takes time to develop that emotional attachment, or at least it should. And then when that relationship ends, it takes time to sever that. Because you've developed. I hate using this, but it's like a drug addict. The same parts of the brain light up in a drug addict's brain as they do when you're in love. And there are hormones, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and a couple of others that impact how you think, what you do. They impact your heart rate. They impact your blood flow. It's amazing. This is literally the chemistry that we all desire, but there is literally chemistry involved with our relationships. So being prepared physically, and I'm not talking about going out and getting physically fit, going working out. Although if that's what you do, great, awesome. I've got some friends that I watch on Facebook, and they are in the gym, they're on the treadmill, they're on their bicycle, doing their spin classes, whatever it is, and they're going to town. Or they're out bike riding or cross country skiing or whatever it is that they're doing. But that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. It's good for you. It's good for all of us. But the being physically prepared, I'm talking about being, having your first date outfit picked out so that you're not spending a lot of time trying to figure out what you want to wear. Understanding, especially if it's a first date, where are you going? Are you going to a concert? Are you going to just coffee or cocktails? I always recommend coffee or cocktails as a first meeting or as a first date. And if it goes well, you can move on to lunch or dinner, or if it's not, 15, 20 minutes, boom, you're done, you're out, and saying thank you, but I just don't feel a connection. It's, I wish you all the best. So, dress accordingly. And ladies, this is more directed at you. You all have makeup. You have shoes. When you know what you're going to wear, you automatically know what your makeup is going to be. You automatically know what shoes you're going to wear, or reasonably close. You may have 2 or 3 pair of shoes that go with this outfit, but you have a general idea. But you take most of the burden off of yourself of worrying what you're going to wear. And guys, you can do the same thing. Know what you look good in. You've been out. You've whenever you put on a certain outfit, people will tell you, "Gee," and I'll use Phil as an example here. He's the only guy that's said hi tonight. Say, "Gee, Phil, you look good tonight. That color looks good on you," or that coat looks great on you. So So we all know we all have certain things that we know look best on us. So have those things in the back of your mind, or have an outfit picked out and hung in the closet and ready to go, so that even on a moment's notice, you can put on that outfit and you're ready to go, and not be struggling or worrying, trying on 20 outfits, or getting frustrated. Finally, I want to touch on personal hygiene. We haven't talked about this, or I haven't talked about this in quite some time. So might as well do it. Might as well start off the year talking about hygiene. Let's get it out of the way, and then this is something that should be on the forefront of your mind. Teeth. One of the first things I recognize, and I think most of us recognize, are a smile. And part of a good smile is teeth. And so make sure you brush your teeth. And that leads to the next one, is breath. When you brush your teeth, it's so important that if you like coffee, if you like wine, if you like spicy foods, to brush your teeth before a date, or have breath mints with you during a date, so that if you're eating something spicy, you're drinking wine, and you get to the point where you might get you'll be in close proximity, you would be amazed at how far foul breath travels. I've been next to people that I had to literally turn sideways because their breath was just so bad. And it's the only thing you can do politely is offer them a mint and say, "Here, would you like a mint? Here, no, have one. Seriously, no, take the whole bowl." Realistically, though, you have to take the effort to make sure that your breath is fresh. There's nothing worse on a first date. A few things that are worse on a first date than bad breath. Deodorant. Some of us have an issue with perspiration and odor. Make sure you use it. And I'm going to jump down a couple to cologne. A lot of you use cologne, men, women, or perfume. Uh, use your perfume or your cologne sparingly. There are some people, there are some guys that you swear they took a bath in it. And I've dated some women that's I swear they've taken a bath in their perfume. But it's important to be able uh, to not to smell good, but not to be overpowering, not to overpower the restaurant or the bar, or wherever it is. It becomes a huge distraction in trying to get to know someone. The bad breath and body odors. Bathing and showering. This all should be very basic stuff, but sometimes, and we've all met someone, we've all been on a date with someone that, wow, don't know where they've been or what they've been doing, but they could have used a shower before they showed up. And hair, that's, guys, run a comb through your hair. Don't show up looking disheveled. Same thing with your clothes. Don't just because it says permanent press doesn't mean you can't put an iron to it, especially if you want to make a great impression on a lady. I've yet to meet a woman that was not impressed by a dress shirt that was nicely starched and pressed. If you don't know how to do it, the laundromats do, or the laundry services do. Bring your shirts in and have them laundered and light starch, and you get nice creases in the sleeves, and it really adds a touch of class to whatever outfit you're wearing. Again, uh, it's just the fine touches that will make uh, that will make a lasting impression on someone. So, with that, I'm pretty much wrapping up. If you guys have questions, I'd be more than happy to answer questions. Again, these are the fundamentals. These are the basics of dating, and it's so important that we get the basics down, that we know the fundamentals and we do them on a regular basis. It's and some of these things sound like absolutely no brainers, but for whatever reason, our society has just gotten lax on so many of these things. And some of you I know personally, and so I know that you're all fine in those in a lot of these areas, but there's certain things that if we continue to practice these basics, we'll have the fundamentals down, and that's 90% of the dating game there. It's then then you're down to the where to look, and the actual dating part of it, and being personable, being social, being being available, emotionally available. These are all keys to great dating. So anyway, with that, if you need some more detailed information, go to my website, ricksoderbeer.com. Take a look at my book, Dating Backward. If you haven't read it, it's a great read. It's 198 pages of thrill-packed adventure. No, seriously, it's 198 pages of good information, basics, fundamentals, and we talk about communication. We talk about toxic relationships and walking away from relationships quickly. We get into great detail about the about creating your must-have and deal breaker list. So if you need help there, check out my book Dating Backward. It's also available on Amazon as in a paperback or in their Kindle e-reader. So it's not available. I had this question at Christmas time that it is not available as an audiobook. It was audiobooks when we wrote the book was just just something relatively new. And so the next book, whenever that comes out, I will have an audio version of that one. So, but anyway, with that being said, we'll wrap tonight up. And I hope you had an awesome Christmas and a wonderful New Year. Let's start the New Year out right by doing the fundamentals, knowing the fundamentals or the basics of dating, and let's have an awesome year. So, and a great week. Let's have a great week. Let's start out with that. So have a great and blessed week, everyone. I love you guys. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week for Monday Mastery live at 5.